Right, let's do it then. Let's move on to what was your ugly point, Maui?
Usually I pick a concept. This time I'm actually picking a team. Or kind of a team that actually won too. It's kind of funny that Stico brought up Sinners and Oscar as his good because I'm actually bringing up Team One beating Extra Salt as my ugly. I think that's actually
and taking the Pro League spot over them.
Yes, mainly the fact that Team One just won Premier Playoffs, winning a spot in the Pro League over Extra Salt, despite the fact that basically the way it looks is that Team One just peaked at the perfect time. Like two of their players who were negative KD during the regular season of Premier, like, just playing tier 2, tier 3 NA players, they were negative. And yet in playoffs, they went positive. They overperformed. They won some amazing clutches. It seems like they grinded, like, in terms of their individual ability. So I respect that. But there's even a few stats that just went up that just like, that's not sustainable. These aren't sustainable numbers. So during the regular season, they went 4-3. So they barely even made it to the playoffs. The other thing is that their 4v5 percentage went up. Their 5v4 percentage went down. And their trade percentages were worse. And they won, and like when you look at Sinners, who peaked on the opposite side of the spectrum in the EU side, it's like all the things that you think are like good team stats went up. Their 5v4s were better. Their 4v5s were actually worse. They actually won less force buys, whereas Team One, every stat that's just kind of like leads to you thinking it's random and just unsustainable went better. Their worst player performed incredibly. So basically, in the grand finals where they played against Extra Salt, one of their bottom fraggers dropped like 100-something ADR too, and it was just like that just feels like they're like Extra Salt are robbed. And I know from a competitor standpoint that it makes sense that if you win the matches, you should be rewarded with whatever was given to you. But there's a history of evidence that Extra Salt have been kind of the third best team in North America. Like I'm saying, EG are the best, Liquid are the best, EG are second best, Extra Salt are third. And Team One's like well beneath that. Like I guess Furia would be above them too, but either way, it's like Team One are way beneath that. There would be like the 10th best team, I think, in the North American region right now. They didn't even qualify for CS Summit's I don't even think they qualified for the CS Summit portion. And those cash cups that they're running now every weekend for ESEA, Team One has played them. They came in 4th place and then like 7th to 10th place very recently, whereas Extra Salt, when they play that, they just smash it every time. They just destroy everybody there. Okay. So you can tell that there's a level of consistency in Extra Salt's play. Plus, they came in 2nd place at FunSpark. They went to Europe and showed everybody that they could beat big in a BO3. They beat Dignitas. They beat Forza. Sure. They took big to the limit in the final 3 maps where it was 16-14, 16-14, 16. Like, they're respectable, is all I'm saying. And this isn't like me just shitting on Team One, or it's just that I think Extra Salt is so much more deserving that I think when you look at the recent circuit and the results, that I find it ugly that Team One is going to get a spot in Pro League. And maybe, you know what, maybe they grind. Maybe they prove me wrong and they perform incredibly well at Pro League. But I thought Extra Salt was a team that could actually go to Pro League and do some damage. They could make it out of their group. They could make a quarterfinals run. Maybe even if they anti-strat well enough, they could make a semis run, something like that. Team One, I just don't see it happening. And I just think the whole situation is ugly because one team just peaked at the perfect time and took a spot away from a team that I thought was for sure the best team in Premier.
Yeah, in case that it wasn't obvious, he did basically say it though. He's not disputing the qualification system. Whoever wins the match gets the point in the spot in the league. The point is though, if this ends up being a massive outlier, he thinks Pro League would just be a stronger league with Extra Salt in, and he'd like to see what Extra Salt could have done where he doesn't feel like Team One's going to be relevant, which is a totally legitimate take. It's essentially like, by the way, we've had this happen many, many times in CSGO in the past. You'd always have a minor, often the EU minor, where one team would just inexplicably be shit, wouldn't qualify through the LAN, but you knew at the time they were like a top 10 team in the world and they would have been awesome at the major. It's the same scenario. You can't dispute the team that made it, but you can wish the other team made it instead. Of course, it's human nature, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have too much opinion on Team One or Extra Salt in that regard because I knew.
Did you ever play Extra Salt when they came to Europe?
Yeah, I paid attention to them because there was a possibility of us playing them, but then we were in the same bracket of IM Summer. But we managed to beat Astralis in opener.
Beat Astralis, yeah.
Yeah, and then Extra Salt on the first day of the tournament actually got knocked out by G2 and Astralis.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I just didn't pay attention to Extra Soul at all, and in NA scene in general, because during COVID, it's not like we can meet each other that fast. So I put my focus elsewhere. But yeah, definitely sucks for them. Team One had a pretty good amount of probably content to watch from these tournaments to prepare for them properly. I remember they beat them last time. I'm not sure if it was Team One that got beaten by Extra Soul, but I remember it was really close. And I remember last map 16, it was Nuke or something, and I remember Sonic shooting the fuse kits away from the on Nuke, somewhere away from the positions, and it in the pistol round. I'm not sure if it was Team One. I think it was because they had such a long history between each other, and I think Extra Salt won that map 16-14, and that's because they won the pistol round. I mean, that's a stretch. Obviously, you never know, but it's probably
factor. Yeah.
Sure. It's probably one of the biggest factors, pistol round, obviously. Okay. So it was already closed there, and just the fact that right now they had too much of a preparation time, maybe Extra Salt might have been a little bit tired from the EU trip because they played multiple tournaments, Funspark, I Am Summer, and probably one more that I can think of right now. So
they played Blast Showdown, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're probably right on that one. Yeah. So something to take into account for, but as Thorin said, it's about EPL being a little less interesting, and this is something that is quite hindering in these ESL tournaments where, as I said before, in Cologne as well, they give chances to other regions, which is completely fine. But then they have partner teams that are not necessarily good enough to probably play in that certain tournament, but they still do, because 2 years ago they signed a paper.
Right, for the last one, this is our last point, but here's the thing, it's not going to be enormous, but it's one that I feel like everyone must have strong feelings about, so I picked a good one for this one. For the ugly, I've just picked the potential for there to be issues with the major. Because if people haven't been paying attention, the international is not going to be happening in Sweden. Apparently they might be able to scramble and do it somewhere that isn't Sweden, and all, again, obviously the problem right now is not every country is available to travel to. Even if you can go to the country, can every country travel to it? Like, there's obviously certain countries will have restrictions. Well, the problem is, even though the CSGO major is months and months from now, the problems that affected the international for Dota 2 sound like they would be the same exact problem, because essentially it wasn't anything to... This is the part that a lot of people are getting lost on, because people don't read. They expect a moron to read something, lie about it, and then they'll just listen to what the moron lies about. That's called journalism nowadays, by the way. Right? So what do you do is, I go and I just read the facts so that I know what the fuck I'm talking about, because I'm supposed to be the journalist. And then if I was working for the media, I'd then have to make up the lies to not be what I said. But anyway, you get the problem. I'm going to keep going back to that. Right? So here's what happened, right? Basically, it's nothing to do with lockdowns. It's not that you can't travel to Sweden. The problem is this: Sweden is not choosing to acknowledge a work visa that says I'm a professional esports player as, like, essentially something that's important to come in during this time. So even though I imagine there's a million sports that are probably way less famous than CS, like, I'd have to guess some of the Scandinavian ones, if you were a floorball player or fucking amateur hockey player, so you could probably go on some of these visas and get there. But unfortunately for esports, you can't right now. So that means, unless they fix this issue for the CSGO match, as far as I can tell, it would apply to certain countries there. Not all of them. Obviously, Europeans can travel generally anyway. But, like, for example, I could imagine that could affect Russians. They often have to go on work visa. Anyone from Asia would go without saying. Probably South America. These are the regions I would expect it to hurt you. So essentially what we're looking at now is, first of all, it's possible, God forbid, the major gets cancelled again, or maybe they have to move the country. Thirdly, if you looked at how they've handled things like this in CS so far, they don't tend to do it quick. They tend to wait until sort of a month before and go, well, it really can't happen now, so we've got to finally do something. So that's why I picked it for the ugly one, because it's not definite that something bad's going to happen yet. It's not definite that any of these are going to be an issue. It's just, the reason I say it's ugly is it just doesn't look good. It looks fucking bad right now. I have all sorts of ominous feelings about what the fuck's going to happen right now, especially when you consider the actual venue they were going to hold it in, that, like, Ericsson Globe, which is, spoiler, by by the way, would have been actually the Flashpoint 2 location, Maui. We were going to actually have that in that when it was still going to be LAN. It'd be an amazing venue, by the way. It's had so many sick tournaments and esports. It's an awesome place. Stockholm itself, an incredibly easy place to get to from the airport. Super high level like development. All like the best internet, food. I mean, it's expensive, but food and everything's all legit. Sadly, it would really, for no joke, been one of the best places we could have had a major. And then you add in the fucking history of Counter-Strike from Sweden. It would be perfect. Like there's so many. To me, it would check so many boxes. But now I have this like horrible sinking feeling where like the sword of Damocles is waving over the top of the event here, Maui. What do you think on this side?
Well, I think that they're devoting their resources right now to finding some alternative. They said to find another spot in Europe for the Dota 2 International.
Yes,
I feel like they should just do the same thing, but for the CS one. Then surely, I think because we all know that they put more resources in Dota than CS, so just use those Dota resources and just shift them over a little bit to what's going on with CS. And I think that probably means that there's going to be a relocation of the major, which, like you're saying, would suck because Stockholm seemed like a really cool place, and I'm sure people have already booked some flights and probably like I was thinking of going like I don't know, I would just like that sounds sick. Like I don't know, I might
Sure.
just go because like it'd be sick to go, why not? And then so I can see from a fan perspective, it would suck. It would actually really blow if it can't be there. But if it's somewhere close, like Denmark, somewhere that's like kind of Nordic or Scandinavian, then that'll at least ease it up a little bit. Although obviously you're gonna have to get a refund for your hotel, whatever other accommodations you had already planned for. But I think that what happens with Dota should just follow through to CS, surely, because I don't think there's any way they get an esports visa for CS if they couldn't for Dota.
Yes.
So then just whatever they do for Dota, do it for CS, please.
Right, what do you think, Stickle? Obviously, from the player side, you're hoping you potentially even be there for the tournament. What have you heard much about any of this news? Have you had any similar feelings? What are you thinking, mate?
I've heard about it. I heard about Dota being trying to relocate, and CSGO should be eventually, due to some sources. I don't know. I don't even know who, but sources say that it should be staying in Sweden. I mean, knowing Valve, it will happen that Dota 2 will happen elsewhere, and CSGO won't happen. Like it's legit one of the worst things that could happen, and I'm not even scraping it off because it legit, you never know. I agree on Moe with this one that we should be relocating both tournaments to the same place if possible, because the volume of spectators, the volume of brands coming in, and the actual tournament will be pretty similar. I understand Dota will have massive prize pool compared to CSGO, but still we're talking about two most favorite games in the past I don't know how much time by Valve. So they need to make a statement as well, because Valorant made their LAN. And I was watching it. It was pretty good. They made it in Iceland, and I think if Valve doesn't do this right, there might be some implications that they're just so much weaker, and they cannot really compete with Riot in the sense that they're not planning ahead enough. Sure. And this is something I'm worried about as well, because as a pro player, it really boggles me that sometimes RMR events are announced 3 weeks prior to them actually happening, which is it shouldn't bother me that much. But imagine those lower tier teams where they need to go through the open qualifier, which is not happening in 3 weeks; it's happening in 5 days. Like, you have to silently prepare for the open qualifier, which is a bloodbath all the time. And these things need to be fixed prior to all the to all the other tournaments. You need to give a heads up at least what's happening, even if it's confidential. Just people will leak it, but we need to know, because we are building schedule 6 months ahead in FPX, and FPX is not a tier 1 team that is standing all the lands. So we have to go through the qualifiers, we have to go through the open, closed qualifiers, we have to sometimes plan the boot camp if possible. We're all from different countries. You have to adapt to certain stuff. So I just don't see. I hope it's gonna end well, but I hope it's not gonna come to the fact that Dota will happen, CSGO won't.
The 1-to-1 for Valorant to CS is concerning too, because Valorant has outlined every qualifier for challengers up to masters. And then they tell you what time the masters are and where the masters are going to be. They even have said that their champions event is going to be in LA, and they have the exact date it's going to happen already. And if Valve can't just schedule, like logistically speaking, match up to Riot, that is gonna be a huge blow to the CS space. Just crossing my fingers there.
Yeah.
Get it together.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.